Good morning. Happy Sunday. Happy daylight savings time. Uh, I'm up way early. So, I'm going to tie a fly this morning that is a single feather fly. Um, this is a shout out to Vilma at Home Depot. When I tied my first fly, she came up at my lunch and asked all about it, and I told her all about it. So, um, anyway, the reason I shouted her out, besides that, is that this feather is from a feather duster at Home Depot. It's one that it's a tube, and you push the tube, and the feather pops out, and you can dust with it. So I saw it, and I thought it was cool. I picked it up, thought I'd try to tie a fly with it, but I've gone a while without tying a fly on it because I didn't know how to use it. Because the feather is really stiff. So besides using it for tail material, I didn't really know how to use it, but I learned a new technique that I want to try, and it's called dubbing loop. I'm gonna try to use that to make this more like a hackle. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this around and get going. All right, this fly. Wow, I haven't had coffee yet. This hook is pretty long, um, over an inch long, and it's pretty flimsy. It moves around a lot, but hooks don't have to be big or small um, to catch fish on them. So I'm going to start with using part of this as tail material, and then I'm going to use part of this as dubbing. So I'm going to do three different techniques with the feather. I'm going to use red thread mainly because it would take so long to make the thread cover the whole hook shank. So I want to use something that will take less time to cover that. This um, this thread is meant for large flies, like big bulky flies, like for deep sea, or not deep sea, but like saltwater flies. Only problem is this hook is so wiry that it wiggles around a lot when you're trying to tie on it. So, like always, most of the time with a fly, you put down a thread base like this, cut off the tip, and then so I've been allowing that to spin all this time, but when it spins, it makes this be more lumpy, and I don't necessarily want it that lumpy because it's already going to take up a lot of space. I'm going to make sure that I wax my thread. I'm using bowstring wax that you use for a compound bow when you make your string for the bow, or when you add things to the bow to make it sticky. So all I'm doing is dragging the wax on the string to make it more sticky. If you don't do that, then the stuff will slide around or pull out pretty easily. I've also got some wire that I'm going to utilize on this fly to help hold down my dubbing. So all I'm going to do with this, just for my tail portion, I'm just going to take a section, good kind of hardy bunch here, just pull it off the shaft of the feather like that, and then you just grab the butt ends, and you can tie in. I'll make it about the length of the hook right there. It's going to be a pretty simple fly. Not a lot of steps here. A couple of turns. I might add some more to that just to make it a little thicker. I like a pretty bushy tail on my flies, so I'll just grab another section again. It's not too much more, but I'll add a little bit. So just a little technique that you use when you do that right there. When you lay them on top and you try to wrap around, it'll pull the feathers over the side of the hook, and you don't want it off the side, you want it off the top. So you pinch them and you go up between your thumb and finger and you hold the string there and you get around the feathers, and then you just drop it down and it makes it drop down. I'll show it. Well, I've already done that part, so I can't show it to you, but if you go back in the video, you'll see me do it. So now I need to build up this section here. Some people might add like lead to this, lead wire, to help it sink a little better, because if it's too feathery, it'll float until it gets wet. And once it gets wet, it'll sink like it's supposed to. I might also add bead chain eyes to this at the end. I might just leave it alone though. Okay, so coming up to, I'm back to where my tail is tied in. I'm going to re-wax because I think I used up all the waxed portion that I just made. Alright, now, and I don't want this to be too long, I can always redub. So now I'm going to dub, I'll put it on dubs. I'm going to take some of this really fine front section. See, they get considerably shorter right here. And this I'm going to cut out because I don't want, when you pull these off, they get a little part of the feather on there. And if I do that and dub it, it'll be lumpy, and I don't want it to be lumpier than it's already going to be. So, man, it's really close. So you can do that there. So I'll just take this. And all I'm going to do is, so this is just a section of the feathers. I'm going to take it and start turning it onto my string. See if I can get it to go on there. Feathers are not ideal for dubbing, this kind of dubbing, but it'll be nice and buggy looking. The whole idea here is to use up as many portions of this one feather as possible. I've done another one feather fly. If you go back and look at some of my videos, I did a one feather fly a while back. And I've also done feather flies where you kind of simulate finding materials on the water edge, like a hook and a duck feather, and maybe you don't have a lure with you, so you pick up some materials and tie it together and make a lure out of it. And sometimes you only have one feather to work with. So I'll do this again. Got another clump because I need to go all the way to the front of this of this hook. And see how it sticks to that wax. And when you dub this on, you always turn it the same direction over and over. If you go backwards, it'll come off. As long as I get coverage to the front. Oh, I didn't tie in my wire. Oh well, I don't have to have the wire. Sometimes if it's real fluffy, you can start with a wire here and then wrap the wire after you wrap the feather on, and it'll bind it down and leave little stripes. But oh well, I forgot that part. This is just a fly I'm making up. It's not a set recipe fly kind of thing. And I think I will have room to put eyes on at the end of this, so I might do that now before I finish the dubbing. So I have a bead chain here, and I've painted part of it black. I'm going to use some black eyes. I think that'll be cool looking. Kind of look mousy a little bit. So you just take 2 bead chain, and I don't want to do that with these. Oh well, I'll just do it. You just take your scissors and cut it. It's not great for scissors, but it's done. So there's 2. I'm going to go up here towards the front, right here. Just lay it over the hook, cross between them. A few turns. It won't take too many turns with this thread because it's the big thread. You just build up around the eyes. And there it is. Now, here's the new technique that I've learned, that I'm trying to work on. So I need to wax my thread again. This is called a dubbing loop. So what you do is you take your thread and you make a loop out of it. Like that. And then you just pull this to the front so you can use it to tie it off. So now you have the loop. And I use my hackle plier and I grab the thread here. And then when I take my finger out, I've got a loop there. I'm going to reset that a little bit. Okay. Come on. Alright, so the idea here is you separate it. And you get, I'm going to cut this feather so I have an easier section to work with. So basically what you're doing, you're making this, but you're making it with string as the shaft instead of the shaft itself. So what I'll do, and this looks like it'll be easy because they're pretty well spaced out. I tried to do this with some squirrel tail, and I had a devil of a time with it because of the way that the end of the squirrel tail wasn't very friendly. So I'm going to use this to help me set it up. And basically what you do is just put it between the 2 strings and you twist it to get it tight a little bit. And you can use this tension to then kind of set up your length. Like that. And now I'm going to carefully go through and trim this piece off without moving those feathers. Another thing about the squirrel tail was it was a little bit long, or sorry, a little bit heavy. You see that's moving when I'm trying to cut it. It was a little bit heavy, so when it turned, they fell out of the string. It's pretty frustrating because I've seen people do it online. I see a lot of people do stuff online that I can't do. All right, so there's my feather. I'm going to turn this, and as it twists, you'll see it kind of flare out some. Yeah, this is going to be cool. Just like that. Perfect. And then I'm going to take this and just wrap it around like you do a hackle. And as I go, I'm going to pull these strands back out of the way so they all face backwards. It's going to be a very, very, very buggy fly, which is cool. That's what I like on these flies. One thing I might have changed is the bead eyes. I might have made them shinier. So you get to the end and you just tie off that string just like you would a normal feather shaft. Get 3 or 4 turns there. Snip that off. Go back just a little bit here. Make a nice red head on there. A few extra turns around those eyes. Build up the nose there. That. Then I'll whip finish it. We'll clear nail polish on the threads on the head. Helps bring it all together as far as the shape, but it also kind of glues it in so your ties don't come undone. And I'm just going to take my brush and brush this all back. So again, if you're just picking this up, this is a feather from a feather duster at work. I picked it up and thought I'd make a fly out of it and use a couple of new techniques that I've picked up. So that's the finished fly. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're ever interested in fly tying, you can pick up the materials pretty easily at Bass Pro Shop or wherever. You can get them on Amazon. You can get vices like that. This hook was a really cheap hook. I think this is one that I got in San Marcos at the corner store by the river. So it's nothing special. It's just a hook. It doesn't have to be expensive fly tying materials. I think the only thing I paid for on this whole deal was, well, I paid for the hook at some point, or I may have found that hook. I don't know. The feather was free. The thread was $2 for the whole roll, or $3 maybe. And the bead chain was off of an old chain from a ceiling fan. So anyway, there's the finished feather duster fly. Have a good morning.